Hi, I'm Paul Friedman, founder of the Marriage Foundation, and the topic today is interesting. It's a question, how to turn your marriage back on. Hi, welcome back. I'm Paul Friedman, founder of the Marriage Foundation, and the question is how to turn your marriage back on, and it's really a good question, and it's unfortunate that anyone has to ask this question. But the truth is, and I'm going to get into a little bit of a lecture before we get into responding to this, so bear with me. Trust me, this is going to be very valuable for you. So what happens is when we get married, it's like going on a ride at a theme park. There's a saying that the wedding day is the happiest day of the bride's life. Now, I got to ask you a question. Does that really make sense? Here you are about to get married, and I don't know how old you were. Maybe you were 24, maybe you were 30, but you got a lot of life left in front of you. And now you're saying that the very best day is the day you got married. It really does not make sense. What makes sense is that every day of your marriage is better and better and better. And yet we have not been taught to think in those terms. If we were, then we would ask the question, well, how do you make your marriage better and better and better every day of your lives? And this was kind of a question that I had. I used to be a divorce mediator. In 2001, clients asked me to help them save their marriage. They came to me for a divorce, and they asked me because as a communications expert at the time, it was very trendy that everything revolved around communication. And so they thought I could help them. And I agreed I would give it a try. And when I spoke with my friends, the marriage counselors, who sent me all my business, virtually all my business, they said, Paul, you'll be really good. Just ask them what's going on, listen, give them an opportunity to vent, which turns out to be a very bad idea, and give them some suggestions about how to move forward with better communication. And I thought, wow, that's not powerful at all. I don't even see how that's going to help anybody. And so I asked myself this question, not immediately. By the way, I asked the couple, give me a few months to figure this out before we sit down. And I asked the question that I had a search for, which was, why do we get married in the first place? And you know, my idea at the time before I got married, and I was divorced at the time when I was doing divorce mediation, my idea was I didn't have any reason to get married. I wanted to have kids. I wanted to, have somebody, but I didn't really understand what marriage was all about. And I thought even more about it, and I realized, and if you think about it, where did I get educated about marriage? Now, here's the context. Everyone gets married, right? And it's the biggest decision of our lives. You know, they say the biggest decision of your life is buying a house. No, it's not. The biggest decision of your life isn't choosing a career. The biggest decision of your life is you're getting married. And yet, we don't know anything about marriage when we get married. We don't know anything about the opposite sex when we get married. We have no idea what we're doing. Is it any surprise that over 50% of the marriages, even then in 2001 and even now in 2025, that there's a 50+% divorce rate? It should be no surprise. So I asked the question, why do we get married in the first place? And frankly, I didn't know the answer. I really didn't. And I started asking all my friends, why did you get married? I thought maybe it was me. It was just me. Everyone else knew. How about you? Did you know why you got married in the first place? And if you're like most people, you will say, well, I fell in love. Now, remember, I was a divorce mediator. So I had a 4x8 beautiful whiteboard in my office because I had to lay out assets and I had to come up with scheduling children. You don't want to get a divorce, by the way. And I used this whiteboard and I asked people, and I'm not getting ahead of myself here, so stay with me. Pretend you're in my office and I say to you what I said to them. And by the way, in those days, I got $300. Probably today it's not that much, but I got $300 for a session. And I said, if your answer is better than mine, you don't have to pay for this session. So I asked the question, what is the reason that we all get married? And I said, I'll write down your answers, and then I'll write down my answer, and you'll decide. And so virtually everyone said, well, I fell in love. So I wrote it down, fell in love. Okay, great. And then the second most popular was, well, I wanted to have a family. And they would look at each other, make sure it was okay, because it wasn't about really their partner. It was about themselves. I want to have a family. Okay. The next answer was, I want to, be with someone. I don't want to be lonely. Okay, that makes sense. And there were a few other responses, but those were the main responses. And I said, okay, now I'm going to write mine down. And I wrote down, you wanted to be happy or happier. And there were and I don't know how many people I met with. This was over the course of 8 years. And over the course of 8 years, only 2 people who happened to be married to each other came up with the right response. I wanted to be happy. Ironic, right? They were a couple. Both of them were prison guards. My practice was in San Diego, California. And both of them were prison guards, and they were having trouble in their marriage. But they knew they wanted to be happy. Everyone else didn't. Saved me a lot of money. So we get married to be happy. And then the next question I had to ask was, okay, what makes us happy? Well, there's a lot of things that make us happy, but it's all fleeting, right? You get a new car, you have a baby. You get a new job, you get an increase in pay. It's all fleeting. We get used to it. But there's one thing. You already know what I'm going to say, don't you? There's only one thing that universally makes every single person happy, and that is the feeling of love. Okay. Now I have what I call the pole stars that everyone should have for marriage. But you didn't have those, and you don't have those now. If those were your current pole stars, you would never be in a place where you're asking how to turn your marriage back on, because it never would have been off track. You see, if we know what we're doing, let's say you're driving your car from one end of the country to the other, and you get off track. You get a little bit lost. You take a detour, unexpected detour. You go, okay, we got to get back on track. We know where we're going. You see, we know where we're going. When your marriage is on, it's because you know where you're going. Where are you going? You're going to happiness and love. Okay, that's the top. Now we have to go down a little bit. Accept that you got off track. Accept that it's not your fault. It's not your wife's fault or your husband's fault, depending on who you are, because we're not taught about marriage. And this shouldn't be a surprise to you. There's a lot of things we're not taught about. And when we are taught about it in our society, we always think we're so civilized in our lives, in the world we live in. And they had that feeling in the 1800s too. They were at the peak of civilization. In fact, that's kind of an interesting thing. And you would think, well, the experts know. Okay, so I'm a little older than you, guaranteed. I was born in the early 50s, and when I would watch TV, there were commercials for cigarettes on television. They don't allow them anymore, but there were. And some of those commercials, and if you don't believe me, you could Google this. Type in Google cigarette commercials where doctors are telling you which cigarette is better. Literally. At that time, doctors recommended smoking a particular cigarette. Whoa. Here's a doctor basically telling you how to catch emphysema. So this expert in health is informing us in our society 180 degrees off. So what do you think about the experts in marriage? Well, let me give you a hint. Western psychology, which has become the experts in marriage, have been mistaught too. They have a belief system that thinks of love. Remember, this was why you got married. I fell in love. They think of love as an abstract thought, meaning it's not grounded in anything tangible. They think that love, and you could Google this right now, they think love is an increased form of like. Is that what love is to you? Was that what love was to you when you got married? Of course not. When we first feel that love, and I'm not saying anyone is bad or anything's wrong. I'm saying that we weren't taught properly. And so when you felt that love, I'm going to help you refresh your memory. You had this sense of euphoria that didn't come from your mind. In the mind, those are called emotions. Those are of the mind. But what you felt was deeper. It was real. It was overwhelming. It kept you in a state of happiness all day, every day. You couldn't wait to see your partner. You were in love. And you were in love here. Now, you may not recall this, but there's a relationship between our mind and us. And what do I mean by that? We are not our mind. You see, this is one of the great misconceptions that keep us low. We are not the mind. We have a mind. Each of us has our own mind. And the mind literally blocks the feeling of our true self, which is love. And when we don't feel this, our marriage is off. Because our marriage is based in love. And so there's something weird going on here. Why is my marriage off? Why do I need to turn my marriage back on? Because we have taken a detour. We got caught up in life. We got caught up in raising our family. We got caught up in our job. We got caught up in politics. We got caught up in this or that. which is interesting if you think about it, because when you first met each other, they were your whole life. Together, you had this amazing, I call it the sacred space of marriage. And what it is two soulmates where 1 and 1 doesn't add up to 2. 1 and 1 adds up to infinity, because you create this positive cycle back and forth of love, infusing the relationship with love, with happiness, with a sense of well-being and harmony. And it goes back and forth, and it builds and builds and builds. And that's why I claim, and I know, that when you are on in your marriage, there's no end to the happiness. And it doesn't reach this place. Well, how do you get this back? Okay, that's the question. How do I get it back? How do I turn my marriage back on? Well, I worked with people for 8 years live. And then I was able to write a couple of books. They're very helpful. And for some of you, reading one of my books, either Lessons for a Happy Marriage or Breaking the Cycle, both are the same, except one is a little more sophisticated because I used it to teach. I used Breaking the Cycle to teach therapists and marriage counselors how to use our system. Also, if your marriage is really struggling, we have an online course for you, one for men and one for women, where I don't just give you an education about marriage like I've been doing up till now, just focusing on one little facet of it, one little facet that is huge, but go into the detail of how to gain control over your marriage, how to live your marriage in a way where it starts producing what you rightfully expected it to produce: happiness and love. It's a beautiful journey. Marriage is a beautiful journey, but you have to understand it in order to utilize it. It's a very complex construct, you might say. And because we live in a very mechanical world, we do, everything has a mechanical aspect, even learning how to love unconditionally, which is, by the way, the purpose of marriage, because that is what keeps us on the super highway towards that never-ending, ever-expanding love that we're meant to feel in our marriage. How do you turn your marriage back on? You go back to where you began. You go back to cultivating that love, to treating your spouse, and you don't have to do it together. Just one of you starts, and it inspires the other to reciprocate. We have so many successes. If you look below, there are links, special links. One of the links is to our website, where you could look at our reviews. You could see how many people have taken our courses and what they think of it. Many people have read our books, and it's really useful. And I'll tell you now, it's above and beyond the traditional teachings of marriage that are trendy and, like the doctor recommending Lucky Strike or Camel, whatever the cigarette was, 180 degrees off. And I could give you example after example, but you could see those in our other videos. When people subscribe, these videos show up in their feed, and they get to watch more. But you could also write in to one of our counselors. I've trained them all, and there's a link for that too. Ask a counselor. And if you have a special question, Another thing you can do is in the comments section below, if you'd like a response from me personally, put your question in and I will do my best to answer it as fully. I don't give you a 1 or 2 word response or tell you, well, get the online course for women or the online course for men or the book. I will add that, but I will also try to help you with your current situation. Other people use the comment section to tell me, wow, we've never seen anything like this. Other people use the comment section to say, you have no idea what you're talking about. And I remove those because I know what I'm talking about. Been doing this since 2001. And as I say, the proof is in the taste of the pudding. So we're in a place now where we're very, very confident about what we offer is spot on. I am so glad that you stopped by. We're here to serve you and to help you with your marriage. Your marriage is important to us. It is important to us because I'm here to serve. That's my mission. Again, I'm Paul Friedman, founder of the Marriage Foundation. God bless you. God bless you. And take care. Thank you.